What's going on, everybody? Feder here from 3D Print SOS. Welcome back to the channel, and in today's video we are going over these three machines. They look very similar yet have a bunch of differences. They're all from Creality. They kind of have some weird naming conventions. The price ranges from about $200 to about $386. And they have a bunch of pros but also some cons. The goal of this video is to help you guys figure out which one of these is right for you if you're in the market for one of these type of machines. And well, since you can get them all in the same place, that might be a little bit easier with a video like this that compares them at the same time. I've had all these for a while. I've definitely had the Creality Ender 3 V3 SE the longest. That one is right over here. And there's a video popping up above me right here with a dedicated video that I did for this. And the TLDR is I have definitely grown to really enjoy this machine. For the base price of $200 and sometimes a lot cheaper than that, this thing is just an easy recommendation for anyone getting into 3D printing or wants to gift 3D printing to somebody, whether it's their kid or grandkid, whatever it might be. I think this is an awesome machine for $200, and it is definitely the best Ender that they have made, at least in my personal opinion. However, there is the KE model that adds clipper, that adds all kinds of stuff, and then there's the CR10 SE, which is just a whole different animal in a very similar package. So as you can see, the water's getting a little bit murky, and I want to go through, showcase the cons, showcase the pros, all the similarities, all the differences, what they were good at, bad at, all that fun stuff. So let me grab my notes right over there. Let's head to the first machine and let's see what they're all about. Let's go. All right, so let's do a kind of a brief overview of what these things are to get it started. So the middle printer right over here, the Ender 3 V3 SE, is kind of Creality's entry-level machine. It's at the very bottom, although I would say it's their best shot at it for sure. But out of these three machines, is kind of like the starter machine. Then we have the KE that's right over here with the gold filament. This is basically the grown-up version of the SE. This is the SE with all the bells and whistles. They added clipper, they added dual-sided cooling, they added a linear rail for faster motion, they added a filament sensor, just all of the little things that you would want to see on this machine, but it's still in the same exact form factor, in the same chassis. Kind of like if this was a WRX, this would be a WRX STI. For those car fans, you might know what I'm talking about. Whereas this is a little bit of a different animal, and that's why it has a different naming convention. So this is an Ender 3 V3 SE, this is an Ender 3 V3 KE, but this is a CR10 SE. And the reason why this is not just a regular CR10 is the regular CR10 is technically larger. It is usually 300 by 300 by 300 print bed, whereas this is the same 235 or 225. All three of them are the same exact print size. But they kept the CR10 a name because this is a far more high-end machine. It is definitely more high-end than the KE. It has more metal, it is more stout, it has better rails on it. This is just a better machine, it's better equipped. And so as you can see, that's where you're kind of deciding on what you want. Now, the reason why this machine might ever be in question, if you just won't I can't just say, just go ahead and buy this one, it's the most amount of money, it's the better one, because this starts to get into the territory of the more recent Core XY structure boxed in printers and their cost. So Creality has their own K models, such as the K1 and the K1 Max, and this machine being a $386 K6. It is definitely barking up the Creality K1's tree, but this definitely has some strengths over that machine as well, and obviously weaknesses over that machine. So I still think there is a market for this thing, and it is very impressive, and you guys will find out as we get through the list. But more importantly, while I'm talking here, make sure you guys are taking a look at the end result prints for these things. They were all printed in the same room, and they were all printed in Creality print and underneath the complete stock slicing, okay? So we're gonna go over that a little bit after this, but first I wanna dive into the pros and cons of each of these machines, starting with the cons. All right, so let's start at the bottom end with the Ender 3 V3 SE right over here. And the cons for this one is you need to buy a PEI sheet. Okay, I know that's just an opinion, but I really don't like the polycarbonate beds that come on these things. I ruined mine instantly. I have two of them. Both of them had the same result, especially if you're printing with silk filaments. They tend to stick a little bit too much and the surface just becomes a headache. And I think on a machine like this that's meant for beginners and meant to be completely settingless, you know, push a button and print, I would highly suggest you purchase a PEI sheet with this machine because it doesn't come with one. So that's definitely a con. The other con, and this might not be a con for everybody, but it runs on an older firmware called Marlin. Like I said, it's not going to matter. And Marlin is very capable and does a whole lot, and it's really been an amazing software and firmware for the community. However, at the moment, Clipper just tends to use the hardware a little bit differently, and because of the way that it works, it is a little bit faster and more convenient by today's standards. For me, especially because both of these machines are based on Clipper, this one having Marlin on it is a little bit of a downside, and some things that come with it, like for example, Marlin is offline, so there's no wireless printing, things like that. So that's the next one. It's no Wi-Fi, no wireless connectivity with this machine, so you're kind of stuck with you know, putting something on an SD card or a USB drive and then walking up to it and then using it that way, just like we've been using 3D printers forever now, but the other ones exist, therefore that's a con. The other con here is the machine is slow. This is not one of the new age print as fast as possible machines. This is just a really entry-level, super you know, easy to use, get this thing out of the box, get printing machine. It is definitely not a speed demon. And finally on my list is there's a lot of plastic with this build. Unlike any other Ender 3s, this Ender 3 V3 SE is all plastic on the bottom, even plastic on top, and it does look better. It looks a lot less intimidating, but because of all the plastic, it does kind of lose a little bit of that rigidity and the mechanical, you know, feel and aspect of the Ender 3. So that's something worth noting, is there's a lot less metal just in general on this machine. All right, those are kind of like the general gist of that. Let's move on to the KE because it is close to this machine. All right, so for the KE, one of the biggest downsides, at least for me, is it runs Clipper, but the Clipper firmware is locked down. It is also not open sourced. There's ways to do it, but the machine as it comes is stuck in Creality's ecosystem on their slicer and using their very limited dashboard. So you are getting Wi-Fi and things like that, but you're not getting what this machine actually runs, and instead you're getting kind of like a closed off version of the machine. So that's kind of its biggest downside there. Then it also has lots of plastic, so even though this machine has a bunch of perks and is meant to go faster than the SE model, it's based on the same chassis, so it does still feel a little bit plasticky. And then it also lacks a bunch of flair. So when you're buying a machine with all of the stuff on it, everything that you might have wanted, you kind of want it to have some kind of zing factor, something that really kind of like, you know, gets you motivated on the machine, gets you excited about it. But admittedly, this one kind of doesn't. It's very much more the same that's on this machine, just with all of the things that you would do to this machine. So there's kind of like, it loses that zing. Whereas with something like this, the CR10 SE, this one has the zing. This one has the color change. It has the nice plastics, things of that nature. So let's just dive into the cons of this one. The cons are much less on this machine, but it also runs Clipper. It also runs a locked down version of Clipper. I actually recently did a video on how to root this machine to get full control. So jump right up there. That's popping up for that video. But the other con I have on here is that the price is a little bit too close to the K1. I think this would be an absolute no-brainer if the price was just a hair cheaper. So this one might be one of those machines that you look out for on a sale, because otherwise I think that I personally might want to just spring for the K1, because the K1 would be enclosed and give you a little bit more the ability to print other materials. However, this is essentially an open version of the K1. It shares a lot of hardware, as you guys will see in the pros, and it is just kind of like taking this platform to the utmost max. All right, so while we're talking about the pros, right, I started mentioning some of the positives here. Let's just dive into it. So let's talk about the CR10 SE, since I'm standing over here. It is fast. It is super fast. It's got to be one of the fastest machines that's slinging a bed that I have seen at least come through here. And like I've mentioned, it seems like it's using just significantly bulkier components that are a lot more robust. It uses larger motors. It has a metal frame. It has a massive linear rail for the Y that I haven't even seen before on any other machine. I believe it's custom to this one. You could probably see stuff like this from larger machines like CNC machines. It's just packed to the brim with features like an LED bar, and it goes on and on. I think this is a printer that just has it, if that makes sense, and that's why it's $386 versus the $200 and the $280. So this is kind of like taking the idea of these two machines right over here and just taking it all the way where I think the only other things that you could have outside of what's on this machine is just a Core XY machine. So that's the pros here. It is a really fun one to use. All right, let's go to the SE. The SE is a super low cost machine with one-touch simple printing. And what I mean by that is all three of them do this, but this one is really impressive that it does this because it's $200. You can quite literally open the slicer on your computer, find an STL file that you like on any of the websites that have STL files, drag that STL file into the slicer, select this machine, select which filament that you put in there, and click print. And it will do everything for you. It'll level the bed, it will do the Z offset. You don't need to do the paper, you don't need to adjust any of the bed stuff. It just prints. And like I mentioned, it's not going to be doing it fast, but as you guys can see the end result, it's going to be pretty close to everything else, just a little bit slower. So if that's not a big deal to you, this $200 range machine just kind of blows my mind a little bit. It's been extremely reliable. I have put a bunch of plastic through this machine itself. It is very maintainable. A lot of all these machines are specifically maintainable because they're not enclosed and you don't have to take them fully apart. You can kind of get to everything. But this one specifically, because it is so simple, it is very easy to maintain if something goes wrong. There's just less hardware on this machine. And then the last thing I have on here as a pro is it has a bit of an upgrade path. And I always like that type of thing where you don't have to pay everything up front. If you just wanted to see if this is something that you like, you can grab something like the Nebula Pad right over here off screen. And something like this will add Clipper, will add a little bit more speed, and will add that Wi-Fi functionality to something like this so that you don't have to run back and forth with a USB or an SD card. So that I really like, that you can just start at the basics, get your feet wet, and then kind of build upon that and add things here and there. In fact, I could see somebody owning this, for a little while and then essentially making their own KE out of it because maybe you couldn't afford that one at the time, or like I said, you didn't just want to invest a bunch of money into the hobby if you didn't know what you were doing. So I definitely really like that about this machine. let's move on to the KE. This is one of the cheapest clipperized printers out there. There's a few brands out there. I think Elegoo has a really inexpensive one. There's a few others. Kingroon has a really inexpensive one, but this is amongst one of the cheapest machines that uses clipper right out of the box. And as some of you guys might know, that offers a lot of tinkering ability and lots of fun if they give us a root access or we take root access ourselves. The machine has Wi-Fi printing. Like I mentioned when I was talking about the other ones, this, because it runs Clipper, it gives you that dashboard, it gives you the ability to add their camera. It just adds a whole lot of, not having to deal with that tiny little screen and taking that functionality right to your browser, or even better yet, right into your slicer, so that you don't have to jump back and forth. You can warm up the machine in the slicer. You can just hit print and it'll just start printing. Little things like that add to the experience of the machine, and this one having that is definitely a major pro. This machine adds linear rails in addition to the rods that are already on the bed. So this adds a linear rail to the x-axis, and that just means there's no wheels. It makes the motion linear and smooth, and it'll last significantly longer than some rubber wheels, obviously. And it can handle a little bit more speed easier with a rail, just because it is a bit more precise. So that's a massive plus for this machine. This machine also has a K1 hot end. For those that know the Creality K1, it has a ceramic heater core. It heats up very fast. It cools down very fast when it needs to. It's been extremely reliable. There's a lot of parts and aftermarket already for it, and this has this on here. So that just gives you a lot more horsepower essentially right here on this machine. It also adds dual-sided cooling to the tool head over here. So you're definitely getting more on this machine. And I think the beauty for this is that it comes with a lot of the upgrades that you would do for something like this, but for only $80 over. So that's kind of the trick with this machine, and the reason why this one exists is this is kind of like bottom of the dollar. What's the lowest printer I can get that's decent? That's this one. And then this one kind of adds all of these things, including the Nebula Pad essentially on it that runs Clipper, making this print faster, giving you the rail, giving you the fans, giving you the better hot end, giving you a filament runout sensor, all for $80. I mentioned that when I was talking about the SE that there's an upgrade path to something like this, the Creality Nebula Pad here. The Nebula Pad is $80 as well. I think it's going to be between $75 and $80. And the thing with that is, when you're adding this to this, 200 plus 80 or 75, that's the same price as the KE, but the KE gives you this plus a lot more hardware on there. So you kind of have to make that decision. Do you want to jump in, see what it's like, and kind of try to catch up? Or do you just jump right in and already get everything that's on there and still not go, knee deep into it like the CR10? So that's kind of it. The only strength for the Nebula Pad here is it comes with an AI camera. And I think they're going to be selling these things separately. I think they already do, actually. You'll be able to add to any of these machines, really. But the Ender 3 SE is going to need the Nebula Pad to have it running, and it comes in the box. So you definitely have a lot of options. And I think Creality's kind of giving you the, have it your way opportunity. If you have the money and you already know what you want, the CR10 SE is kind of it. If you've maybe have some experience, don't want to spend a lot of money, probably the KE would be the one. And then if you want to just jump in on the lowest cost machine that'll still be fantastic, that's probably this one. All right, so that's the pros and cons of all three of these. Hopefully that helped. The last thing I want to talk about is the prints. So let's do that. All right, so talking about these prints is actually really important, because at a glance, even if you're not glancing, if you're just taking, a deep gander at each one of these things, I don't think you're going to be able to figure out which machine printed what and how fast. There's just no difference. I think at the end of the day, at least for PLA, the result is going to be very, very similar. And I think that is extremely important to note, is if you're spending 200 bucks, you're going to be able to print the same things that this machine is going to do. And at the end of the day, the difference is time. It's how long these prints take. So I have three very different prints that I've done, like I mentioned before, I used Creality print, and I used their slicer profiles that are in there. I didn't alter anything. I just put the filament in, dragged the file in, selected the machine, selected PLA, and let it go. So let's go over that. So let's start with the SE right over here in the middle, the Ender 3 SE. So we have a bowl right over here, this decorative candy bowl that's pretty much solid plastic actually. That took 18 hours to print. The Benchy took 51 hours to print, and the crate took 6 hours to print. And then let's go over to the KE that's now running Clipper, and it is a little bit faster at the bowl at 17, the Benchy at around 40, just under 40, and the crate at 4.5 hours. So this machine is definitely a little bit faster than the SE at the same exact quality. You're literally just paying a few more dollars to save yourself some time. I have some notes to talk about this a little bit afterwards because you can make this go even faster. I think that they were very conservative with their profiles in the slicer for this machine. All right, let's go over to the CR10 SE. So the CR10 here did a bowl in 12 hours. So that's pretty significant, 6 hour difference there. The Benchy in just 19 minutes. The file says it's a 14-minute Benchy, but at the end of the day, this takes 19 minutes to print the Benchy. The quality is very, very good. And then the crate in just 3 hours. This is a folding, unlockable, stackable crate. And something like this only took 3 hours to print on this machine, whereas we're talking about 6 hours here. Now, 6 hours is not a long time. If you have some patience, you can print that in 6 hours and be very happy with it. But this machine doing it in 3 means you can get 2 of these crates done at the same time as one. So that's why you're paying this amount of money. You're not paying double, just under, but close enough. That's where the money is at, and that's where the CR10 SE really shines. I do honestly think that this is one of the current best bed slingers around. Not only just equipment on it, the build quality is extremely high. The components that are used are very good. It's just a really, really solid bed slinger, and I would definitely recommend this to anybody who's looking for a bed slinger that's on the same kind of par as the Creality K1 or similar machines. All right, so that's the times. Hopefully you guys took a look there and what that came out, and you can draw your own conclusions to that. Oh, and for those keen-eyed folks, if you guys saw in here, we have this wild Benchy that kind of got messed up on the Y. So what I did here is I took the files from the CR10 SE, that 14-minute Benchy, and I tried to print it on the KE. And it looks like the bed mechanism and whatever the ratio must be for that motor just cannot compete with what the CR10 SE does speed-wise, and it makes this ridiculous, wobbly, kind of funny, drunk Benchy. Now with that said, if you slow this down to about 18 minutes instead of the 14-minute Benchy, I have a feeling this thing is going to print just fine. It is way more capable, and the reason why I mentioned in passing that I think they're kind of underdoing this machine is just to be on the safe side. I think once you get to know the slicer a little bit better, or maybe you root the machine or whatever it might be, or start using other slicers, I have a feeling this machine will be able to print much faster than the numbers that you guys just saw. All right, let's move on. All right, well, hopefully that has helped somebody figure out which one of these machines is for them, or maybe if you're trying to buy a machine to gift, which one to give to whoever. The links to all of these things, as usual, are going to be down below. They were sent to me for review. Both the KE and the CR10 SE were sent to me by Creality for review, and the Ender 3 V3 SE was sent to me by Gear. So thank you to both brands for hooking me up and to provide these things for me so that I can make videos like this to help you guys and guide you onto your purchase. Please check out the links down below to the Discord. That is a completely free chat, essentially, where you can show off your prints, you can get technical assistance, or maybe help other people if you're so inclined. I love seeing your workspaces, your printer builds, all that good stuff. That's in the Discord down below. If you guys want to support the channel, please consider becoming a Patreon member or a YouTube member. It goes a long way, and you guys get to see all of these videos early, as well as talk to me directly. All right, everybody, I think that's all for me for today. And as always, I'll see you down in the comments. Later.